Hello everyone, as part of the interview series of CSPC 2022, we are pleased to have with us Dr. Sarah Lubik, Director of Entrepreneurship at Simon Fraser University. Sarah, great to have you with us.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for the support of this SFU for CSPC 2022. I just want to ask you a couple of questions. First, I want to start with the general question about the role of universities and policymakers in making sure that the output of scientific research is translated into solutions for global challenges. What do you think we can do?
I think we need to realize that that's a human problem. It's a science problem that needs a human approach. And that is something that I've seen at the conference here. We need to be thinking about three different things: culture change, skills, and also commercialization. And so when it comes to culture change, we need to be focusing on the fact that a lot of our students don't go into academia, but they're still our strongest advocates. They're still the most incredible talent that we have, and they're the people we need to change and to solve global problems. And yet they often don't have the skills that are required to, or even the mindset required, to solve those problems in different ways in industry, also in their labs, and also through moving into industry and being receptor capacity in industry. Right. And so if those are outcomes that we value, the academy, the labs, the universities, the policymakers need to value those things as outcomes. You can't just say, oh, well, if the student doesn't go into academia, then there are other things. These need to be equally supported pathways and equally celebrated pathways. And then when it comes to skills, they need to be able to take the science that they have, that they've become experts in, and make it relevant to companies, to the population, to the citizens, so that they can help translate that research into impact from whatever space they take. And then with commercialization, one of the things we need to realize is that this is a long-term, multi-year, wide-ranging challenge. And often it's seen as binary. You're either in the lab or you're a company. And there's actually this big gray area where we often treat people who are learning to be entrepreneurs as though they're already companies. And we put the same restrictions on them that we would if it was a company. And so looking at the ability to count internships and stipends and postdocs around commercialization and around entrepreneurship as part of training, rather than saying that that's part of entrepreneurship and it belongs in something that we need match funding for, becomes a much more effective approach and will have much higher ROI. So we need to look at all of those different pieces and interdependently. That's
great and excellent insights, and I guess we can continue having more conversation about that, because interesting points you raised. I just want to touch on one of the things that you said about this 80% of grad students cannot go to academia. And you mentioned that. So what policymakers can do to support that 80% who necessarily will not be an independent investigators, but certainly they will contribute to various aspects of our economy and still even research enterprises. What the policymakers can do for this next generation?
The things that we need to make sure is that they don't get to the end of their PhD and then think, oh no, I'm not going to get an academic job. Now what? And feel completely lost. And then feel like they need to change direction completely, or we lose them out of the scientific community. So if they know earlier on there's the possibilities of being in science policy, being in industry, still being in academic but entrepreneurial, or just being a change maker in society, having those connections and having those paths open to them. And the next step to that is making sure that we have training that works alongside our PhD programs and our graduate programs that allows them to build those translational skills. They're often called soft skills, but I think I heard them here called power skills. And make sure that they understand how to make their science relevant in industry or in government, or to, even if you're in a university, you still need to make sure that the president knows why what you do is important. So we need to do that, but we also then need to take an empathetic approach, because we can't just add more and more demands onto what we ask of PhD grad students and postdocs, because they're already people who are often, they have student loans, they have caregiving responsibilities, and they often wear multiple hats because of our A-ships or TAing or what have you, to say, oh, also, I know that your science can save the world. let me ask you to do more stuff, and then even with more training, ask you to pay for it, it's asking too much of the people we want to save the world. So making sure that they have these pathways open to them, that we support them, and that there's no barrier to participation.
So could you give me some examples of the programs that you mentioned, for example, can be helpful for graduate students, for the next generation? Do you have those examples in your institute?
Absolutely, we do. So in 2015, SFU created the Invention to Innovation program, which is a graduate certificate in science and tech commercialization. And so it was a program that was running one evening a week for a year that students could convocate with, that would allow them to work on their own research and come up with a commercialization plan for their research or their lab. And in 2019, SFU partnered with MyTax to make it largely asynchronous, take it across the country, and now we're working with a Eastern cohort with Queen's University and an Atlantic cohort with Dalhousie and Memorial, and if everything goes well, French cohort next year. And all of that is creating learning groups and mentorship groups and learning communities right across the country of all of our scientists and entrepreneurs, so that when they leave, they have the skill set, they have the mindset, they have the plan, and they have the network to take those skills and take that research into practice.
This is fascinating national network on entrepreneurship. That's great. Congratulations on that. And how people can get engaged with this program?
Very easy. You either go to, you'd think that would be an easy question to answer. The easiest way to get in touch with us is I2I, the letter I to letter I at sfu.ca.
Right.
But you can also go to the MyTax website, or you can go to the SFU MyTax I2I website.
Which is wonderful. Thank you for that. So the last question is about CSPC. I think you are the first timer at CSPC, if I'm not mistaken.
First time doing it live.
Okay, yes, of course. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I just want to know your impression of this conference and the work that we do.
I've been really impressed. I will definitely be back next year.
Okay, that's good to hear.
I like how open everyone is, especially across disciplines. At some conferences, you can have a very I'm the expert, listen to me approach. I felt it was more a we're a community, how do we do things together approach. And I also really appreciate that the values of CSPC come out through everything that is done here, and particularly the equity lens and the community lens, and seeing that it even goes down into your volunteers, and seeing the next generation come up with this idea of how do I become part of this community, I am part of this community, and how do I help Canada take these amazing ideas forward.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Sarah Lubik, for your presence here at the conference, and look forward to have you in future conferences.
Thanks so much for having me.